Hello, guys, and welcome to the Quevedo Kids podcast. I'm Jaime, and today we got Debbie, Mason, Vaiden, and we have a special guest, which is Roberto Gonzalez, who participated in the army for the Veterans Day.
That'd be me.
Yeah, okay. So we're gonna just hop right into it.
So we're gonna do first is we're gonna have Roberto, aka our grandfather. We're gonna have him introduce him. So take it away. You have the floor.
I guess that's for me, right? This is Roberto Gonzalez. I'm the proud grandfather, abuelo, of these kids over here. I'm very proud of what they're doing with the podcast and staying in tune with technology. I served in the United States Army back in the 70s, late 60s, 70s, and I was discharged, honorable discharge as an E5, which is the equivalent of a sergeant. And here I am on Veterans Day, proudly disposing or displaying my American flag in front of my house, and I'm very proud of it, and very proud to be a veteran and to serve the United States Army.
Okay.
That being
go ahead.
No, that being said, I'm open to conversation.
All right. Deb, how about we start with some questions?
All right. So the first question that I wanted to ask was that we know that the viewers don't know, but we know that you were drafted into the military. And the question I wanted to ask you, what was your first reaction to being drafted?
Well, I was back in 1968. They had instituted the first draft in quite some time, and I was totally surprised and somewhat concerned, very disconcerting about being drafted, especially during that era, which was the Vietnam conflict, a very unpopular conflict and war that we were involved with in Vietnam back in the 60s and mid to late 60s and early 70s. Total shock and quite worrisome.
What about your parents' reactions?
Well, my dad was in the military himself. He was in the Army. As a matter of fact, he was drafted as well when we lived in Puerto Rico. My mom, being the typical worrisome mom, my mother was worried about me being drafted and joining the Army by conscription, and of course was concerned as other friends and family members were about the Vietnam conflict.
Okay, Deb, can I say something real quick?
Go ahead.
Okay. I would like to give a shout out to my tata who supported in the Navy, protecting our country and the USA. He did his time to help the service and help a lot of people in his time. And I just like to say thank you to him. And rest in peace, tata.
Okay. Next question I have was, Gramps, how old were you when you were drafted?
I was 18 years old at the time when I got drafted. And let me clarify that when I got drafted, I was very fortunate at the time when there was a shift with the conflict in Vietnam. So I never did serve overseas. I never served in Vietnam itself. I spent all of my time here in the United States and in the Washington, D.C. area, servicing that area in a specialized unit.
That was going to be my next question was, what was your position?
We did electronics work. I was assigned electronics work when I got out of basic training. I went to basic training in Fort Dix, Virginia. Another fortunate thing for me because Fort Dix wasn't far from where I used to live in the Bronx, New York. So I was stationed in Fort Dix for training and got a couple of weeks leave. Then I was assigned to go to what's called Cameron Station in Alexandria, Virginia, to work on electronic components.
Go ahead.
Okay. Grandpa, what was it like working or participating in the Army? And how does it feel to you? Like what? Like, do you feel sad if you're Did it feel tiring? Or like what it felt?
Well, fortunately at our age, back then, late teens, early 20s, we're pretty much in pretty good health and pretty good shape. If you weren't, you will be once you go to basic training. It's a lot of physical work. It's a lot of getting up early in the morning, a lot of marching, a lot of running, carrying heavy military equipment and your backpack and so forth. A lot of discipline. You needed to do what you were told. You had to get up early. You had to be ready and take care of things around the base. So it's a lot of physical training and getting you in shape and to make the Army work as one complete unit.
All right, any other questions from you guys, Mason, Vin?
We get Mason and Vaiden wants to ask a couple.
Oh, I know those two.
Go ahead, Mace.
Go ahead, Mason, ask a question.
You can hear me, right?
Yes, I could hear you.
Okay. What was it? What was your mom and dad's reaction for you coming back when you were?
When I was released, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, of course, they were very happy but they after a while when they found out what my assignment was in Alexandria, Virginia, they were more at ease, especially my mother. My dad, like I said, he was in the military, so he was glad I went. And quite frankly, looking back at it, it was a very, very important experience in my life, and it made me appreciate a lot of things in my life and instituted things that I've done and I still do in my current life.
How long were you in the Army, per se? How long?
I was drafted back then. When you get drafted, it's for a 2-year commitment and what's called 4 years inactive reserve. That means you're still liable to be called back after you release after your 2-year commitment. However, I served a year and a half because Congress at the time mandated a cutback in military spending and staff. So I was released 6 months early. So I served a year and a half, and the rest was spent in the military reserve. I was called back 2 weeks. I'm sorry, 2 years later, and did approximately 2 weeks of training in Virginia as a reserve. But after that, I was never called back again and got my discharge for a total of a 6-year commitment.
And what did you do after you were discharged?
After I was discharged, I was fortunate enough to have the GI Bill, which helped me pay for my education, my college education, and because of that, I was able to get a college degree, 4-year degree with the GI Bill of Rights for Education. So they supported me financially and to afford me to finish my college education. Then I did sociology work for a couple of years after that, and then worked with the family business.
What was the family business?
My dad and mom, mostly my dad and my brothers, they ran a food store, what's called in the Bronx, what we call Bronx, New York, a bodega. It was a good sized superette, and they asked me to join them, which I did. After I left the work with the South Bronx, I worked in the South Bronx project, and I went to join them. And I also did what I call a stint with the Job Corps. It was a subsidiary of the Job Corps that I worked for a couple of years in recruiting volunteers to help those that graduated from the Job Corps program.
Did they serve you MREs or did they serve you regular food when you were?
When I was in the Army, well, in the basic training, yes, it was a mess hall. It was getting up early and 3 times a day in what we call a mess hall. But when I was my tenure in Alexandria, Virginia, for a year and a half, we had to find our own place to live. So they subsided, financially where we stayed. I stayed in an apartment with 2 other recruits from my unit. So they paid me extra to pay for rent and pay for food. So I had the privileges of cooking my own meals or going out for dinner.
So,
Okay.
Another question I wanted to ask was, a lot of people think that joining the army is all about going overseas and fighting other people. And they say that people like things that you did, like work behind the scene to try to help the people that were overseas. They call it like quote unquote less than what the others do. So what would your response be to that?
Each person in every military position, whether it be the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, the Merchant Marines, the Air Force, each person that does a job is within the military is just as important as the next person, whether it's the next step up or the next person to the step beside you. So it's all integrated. Each job is just as important as the other one. Some jobs are more dangerous than others, of course, as for instance, infantry, being on the field. But there are a lot of support units that are involved in the military throughout the United States military, where units help each other to help people stay safe, not only individuals, but groups, as well as our country and other countries as well. So each job is important.
Okay, I have a question for you, Governor. Okay, my question is, what countries have you faced while you were in the army, and what was the toughest country you faced while you were in the army?
I never went overseas. I've done a lot of traveling outside of the army, but I never went overseas for battle conditions or while I was in the military itself. And like I said, that was one of the things that just happened when I got drafted. And so I have had no tough decisions as to which country was tougher than the other because I didn't serve during armed combat.
Dad, you want to kick it off with more questions?
Yeah. So there was a question. So did you have any close friends that were also in the military?
Oh yeah, I had several close friends, and you develop quite an extensive camaraderie. Well, as in any group, but especially in the military, because your life and your work depends on those around you, next to you, and above and below you. So I developed quite a few friendships back then.
Doesn't surprise me. I know you're quite the talker.
Do you have another question? I
Yeah,
could talk some
so
more.
I know. What was you say you did a lot of traveling. What was the your favorite place that you traveled to?
My most rewarding was when I went to Egypt. I always wanted to see the pyramids in the Giza Plateau and the Sphinx in Egypt. That's what was on my list of things that I wanted to do, meaning to visit. And that'll always. I have artifacts here from my trip in Egypt and pictures that I've taken of the areas in Egypt that I was very happy to have experienced, as well as while in Egypt in Alexandria, I had this chain made, was called a cartouche, and I don't know if you could see it there, but it's an Egyptian writing, hieroglyphics, and they're the first letters of my grandson's first names. Something that I treasure, something that I wear every day, and that's one of my mementos of that trip. Outside of that, I loved Italy. Italy was one of my other favorite places to go to, and before that, the Caribbean. I love being born in Puerto Rico, and when we uh, when we had vacations in the Caribbean, I I, I love the Caribbean, the beaches, snorkeling, and warm water and beautiful islands.
So you worked in the family business at the bodega in New York. Then and then you moved, obviously. So what was your plan on? What was your like plan after moving out of New York?
Well, you know what? Back in 1978, I drove cross country from the Bronx out here to California with a friend of mine and a high school friend. And I liked what I saw out here back in 1978. I went up and down the state, San Francisco, South to LA area. We went back and we saw the Grand Canyon. And back then, I thought if I ever had an opportunity to live out here, that I would. And that opportunity came up in 1981. And they were recruiting for bilingual police officers in the city of San Jose. So I applied, and lo and behold, I was tested and was selected, and here I am since 1981. So that makes it 40 years later. I was only going to do it temporarily, like for a couple of years. I was single at the time, and to go see the sights all over California, camping, fishing, Yosemite, Tahoe, and enjoy the state. But here I am, 40 years later, and I'm glad.
I have a question. Speaking of a police officer, you were actually part of the San Jose Police Department for about how many years?
25 years.
25 years working at the San Jose Police, helping our service and protecting our city at all times. I just want to shout out to you for that and keep doing what you're doing.
Well, thank you. Very much appreciated.
So we are running out of time on this meeting, but I wanted to ask one or two more things. So you have experience in a lot of things. So what would you, what would you give any advice to people who want to maybe join the military someday or are in training to do so?
I would encourage that. It'll help build a character. It'll help you set a stepping stone and help you design the rest of your life, because it'll also afford you the opportunity to train in an area of your interest. And if you have not decided what might you might be interested in your life or career, it's something to look into, and it'll develop character. It'll develop friendships that'll last for lifetimes, and it'll make you a better overall person. And I do certainly hope, and I'm sure it does, help you to take advantage of the situation of what it applies for and what it affords you, and the friendships and the relationships that you've made, they'll last for a lifetime.
All right.
Jaime, any other questions that you wanted to ask him? Mason, Vaiden, any of you?
Okay, I got a question. Again, this is kind of similar to the like how it was in how it was working in the army. So like, how was it working in the police department, and what did you do?
Well, working in the police department for 25 years, I've come across a lot of important situations and met a lot of important people. I've worked from patrol. I've worked patrol. I've worked I worked patrol. I've worked specialized units. I did backgrounds investigations for new applicants. I did street crimes, undercover units. I worked processing individuals and prisoners before they got booked into the county jail or released, and worked inside and out, and it was very rewarding. And what a wide range of cases of incidents that I've had. Some I would love to share, but and others I would not like to. Is you okay?
Dude, that was a perfect ending. Actually, I don't know. All right. Well, any more questions, you guys?
Any other questions, Mason, Vaiden, you guys want to ask? I think Vaiden had one before Jaime asked that question.
I've got a question for Vaiden when he's done.
What was the funniest pullover you've ever had?
That's a
Uh,
good one.
Gorilla.
Oh, here we go.
What Vaden is referring to is a vehicle stop that I made once, and while on patrol, it was a Halloween night, and this rider on a motorcycle, sole rider, no occupant, I forgot what the infraction was, violation was, but when I stopped, I had no license plate on the vehicle and on the motorcycle. So when I put it out on the air, uh, the rider was wearing a gorilla outfit. So when I put it on the air, the best way I could describe it without a license plate being afforded to me was 1195 is the police code for vehicle stops. So I said, "Hi, this is unit." Uh, and anyway, so I made the vehicle stop on this guy that was dressed in a gorilla outfit on Halloween. So that's how I put it out. Lacking the license plate, I put the vehicle stop on a gorilla on a motorcycle. So shortly after I made a stop, this other patrol car pulled behind me, and I noticed it was a lieutenant. I was an officer at the time, and the lieutenant gets out of his car, and I'm wondering why the lieutenant stopped. I didn't request for a backup or anything, and I'm wondering why the lieutenant is joining me on my stop. So as soon as he got out of the car, I see that he was laughing and smiling. Then when I went back to talk to him, I said, "Everything all right?" So he said, "Oh no, it's just that when you put it out, the dispatcher sent me a message because it didn't seem like it was politically correct that you said you stopped a gorilla on a motorcycle." So I said, I wasn't sure what he meant by that. Then it hit me. Says, oh my. So he said, well, now I know what it is. It's an actual guy in a gorilla suit. And the dispatcher thought you meant something else. So, but I'll clarify with her, so. And that was one of the many interesting stops that I've had in my career.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. So I just want quick thanks to Grandpa for stopping in and telling some stories.
Yeah,
Oh,
thanks. Yeah,
it was, you're most welcome. Very gratifying and very interesting. Thank you for having me on board.
Okay, we're gonna end the podcast here. Just want to do a big thanks to our grandfather for coming on and telling you guys about his work, helping and protecting our country. I want to make a big thanks to him. Thank to Jaime, Vaiden, Mason for coming on too, and we'll see you guys in the next podcast.